Okay, you're live. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, all. Let me see. I like to call the Town of Rocky Hill Plan Implementation Committee Zoom remote meeting of March 3rd, 2021 to order. My name is Dimple Desai, Chairman of the committee. We also have guests today. I'm not going to go through the committee members, but I think today's meeting is about to hear some presentation from our guests, and so on the complete street concepts. So that's what the meeting is about. I would like to go through and see if we have any public comments, and I believe we have one gentleman who has requested to be speaking at the public comment period. So is that Kevin Sullivan, who was interested in speaking during the public comment period?
I'm sorry, I don't have anything in particular to bring up. I thought that there would be the chance that I might be called upon. So I hope I'm not being presumptuous by having asked to be a participant. Thank you.
All right, yeah. As I said, today's meeting is about about our guests who are going to do a presentation on the complete streets. So it's not going to be, like back and forth, but, we'll see. Having said that, I would like to introduce, we have two speakers. One is Ann Hartman, Deputy Director of the Central Connecticut Health District. And we have Peter Gillespie, the Town Planner and Director of Economic Development, Town of Wethersfield. And what I would do is give the podium to Ann Hartman, and you can take over.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting us to come and chat. I'm going to share my screen and do just a little brief sort of what, where, why on complete streets. And then Peter will go into more details. And I would say both Kevin and Peter have been along on this ride. And Ed was sort of in and out of some of this ride. So if there's something that you feel like I've missed in my presentation, I will not be offended if you add something in. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So this is just going to be a bit of an overview for you all on complete streets. And before I get started, I don't know if I can see everybody when I'm up here. I should have done it before I shared my screen. Is everybody in this group fairly familiar with the concept of complete streets? Have you heard about it before? I see some east and west, or people not? I can't see everybody. All right, I'm going to just keep going on here. So part one. So what are complete streets? So first I'm going to show you some words. I tried to stay away from words, but it's hard to get away from some words as we're getting into this. So complete streets, the definitions kind of vary of what is a complete street. And it's kind of changed over time as the concept has been around, but the bulk of the definitions have some similarities. And one of them is that it's a broad approach to transportation. And it starts at the design level and at the design process. And it includes all users or all travelers. And so when they say all travelers, that is kind of a broad definition. It goes from pedestrians to bicyclists to people of all abilities or disabilities, public transportation, and also automobiles. So really designing for everybody. What has changed more recently is that there has been a pretty strong focus on safety. And that has come up through the years. There's been a group called Smart Growth America, which you will see referenced later on. And they have come up with something called Dangerous by Design. And they look at the number of pedestrian accidents that have occurred due to vehicles hitting them. And that number has gone up dramatically. And so as that number has gone up, the focus has shifted a lot to safety. So here's the definition that is a more recent one, which is designed to operate and prioritize safety, comfort, and access to destinations for, again, all people. So they're also, so down here in the bolded section, routinely designed and operate right-of-way to prioritize slower speeds for all people who use the roads over high speeds for motor vehicles. And so what they have found is as you design the streets and change the streets, when you narrow the streets, you can slow the traffic and provide more safety for people. So complete streets, this is kind of a familiar slide that I've seen a number of different times. And this, it's not pro forma, but it's kind of looking at what are some ideal sizes for bike lanes, for cars, for pedestrians, and for sort of safety zones between them. And not all streets in complete streets have all of these. That's kind of a fallacy about complete streets. Not all streets need to look like this, but when people adopt complete streets, they pick and choose what streets do they want to focus on to have access for all people. And they kind of look, you know, at the design level. I really like this slide because it shows such possibility of what can change a before and after. And you can see how in this particular city, they made it not only more appealing for people to be on, they made it safer by having the bike lane. And then you can see in this part, you can see someone in a wheelchair. So it's, you know, handicap accessible and well marked off for pedestrians and non-vehicles in those lanes. Here's another that you can see. It makes it safe for people to cross roads and to be close to the road, relatively close to the road. So complete streets, it sort of grew from transportation planning has really been focused for many years. It was focused strictly on the automobile post-war. I'm a Michigan girl, Detroit, we liked cars, we had great highways, and the whole country really, we were focused on how to move the automobile and the driver. In the 1970s, there was some community groups who started to look at something called routine accommodation and wanting to get some roadways for bikes and pedestrians. And that didn't gain a whole lot of steam. It was just kind of random in different places across the country. In 1990, when the ADA came along, it broadened accommodations to include pedestrians of all abilities. And then in 1991, there was something called the Intermodal Surface Transportation Equity Act. Sounds like something Washington came up with. But that kind of gave more funding to look at people who would be the pedestrian and bike coordinators. But despite that, that was a federal law. There still wasn't a lot happening on the local levels. But in 2003, that began to change. There was some national organizations that kind of got together, everything from American Planners Association, which is, I believe, probably a group that your town planners are aware of if they don't even belong to it, gathered together with AARP, some bike pedestrian groups, transportation groups to come up with this concept of broadening routine accommodation. And then the term complete streets was coined kind of from that association. And then the National Complete Streets Coalition was officially formed, which is all of those groups together working to get streets more safe and more accessible for all people. So why would you want to do complete streets? What's the advantage for doing something, this design process that has many different aspects to it? And what has really emerged is that safety is actually a very important piece of the benefits of complete streets. This is just a quick graphic to show you that when a vehicle is going 20 miles an hour, 9 out of 10 pedestrians will survive. You can see what happens when you go up to 30 miles an hour, 5 out of 10 people will survive. Vehicle going 40 miles an hour, only 1 survive. This is another graph that kind of shows the same thing. This is risk of severe injury. This is speed and the percentage of people, and it's the same thing for death. It goes up the faster you get. So again, complete streets help streets be more accessible and safe for people who are not necessarily in a vehicle. Interestingly, Connecticut also passed a law. In 2009, Connecticut has a complete streets policy at the state level. It helps to create very livable communities, especially for vulnerable people on our streets. And as Connecticut is aging, we have more people, older people who are on the streets, and helping them to get around is important. It also improves equity and safety and public health. And so I'll talk a little bit more about how we got involved, but the public health benefits of having ability for people to ride and walk are significant. And that's how we sort of started to get involved. I'd also like to say that there's not a lot of research yet, but the idea of having us, meaning us people who are residing in streets that have complete streets, the ability to get around and not have to burn fossil fuels is very appealing as our environment is changing. And so the reduction in the possible uses of our car and not having to rely on it is an appealing piece of this as well. So complete streets make the town very appealing to visit, and it can become a destination. I don't know if any of you have ridden your bike or visited Canton, Connecticut, which has a complete streets policy. And the pathways that go through the town really draw people in. I rode my bike through there a couple of times this summer, and it was vibrant. There was people, have their bikes across the roads, they're buying sandwiches, hanging out, just resting from their bike ride, hanging out near the river. And it brought it was a very nice vibe. Maybe if I lived on that street that was busy, I would have thought otherwise, but it was a fun environment that brought a lot of people in, and we were all spending money, whether it was for something to drink or something to eat, looking at the little shops. So it also brings some economic vitality. There's some interesting studies that show that for more than 75% of the population, having sidewalks is an important factor in buying a home. Strong majorities want more places to walk, and walkable neighborhoods increase property values and simplify getting to services in towns. As the millennials are cruising up through the age brackets, they prefer walking over driving. And there's a recent study, 2015, that found complete streets result in increased private business investments as well. So where are these complete streets? Well, they're not just in our country. They're different places around the world, and they do focus on different aspects. So it's not a one-step-fit-all. You don't have to adopt every aspect of complete streets, and they're different based on the community that is working towards having more complete streets. Here was a, a map of the United States. Where are some of the complete streets? You can see the dots. Some are policies, some are resolutions. And this I want to show you. It's hopefully my link will work. That wasn't the link that I wanted. It worked earlier. Oh, where did it go? Sorry. Okay, this is what I wanted. So this is just showing how complete streets policies have changed in the US over the years. So starting in 2006, the red outlines are where there's a state level policy. And then the darker green you get, the more policies at the local and regional levels there are. So we're just going to sort of scroll through the years here. 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10. My home state, I would just like to say, was the first one to get into the dark green.
Excuse me, Anne, you're gonna have to share a different screen other than your PowerPoint.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot that I had to do that. Okay. Stop share. I'll go to the other one. Okay, can you see this now?
Yep, we got it.
Okay, so I'll go back. 2006. Now it's 7, 8, 9. There we go, 11, 12. So as you can see, as we're going through the years, more and more states are adopting complete streets policies. And here we have 2018. At 2018, there were at least 14 states that had complete streets policies. So I'm going to go back to my other screen. So altogether, 1,600 policies in the U.S., including 35 states as of now, and District of Columbia and Commonwealth. So Connecticut was the 10th state to adopt a complete street policy law back in 2009. And I believe there are more.
I think you have a different screen, and
I'm still not in there.
Nope,
you're-
We see your email.
You
Do you have a
see,
doctor's appointment coming up ahead?
Don't
Oh,
miss
boy.
that appointment.
Let's minimize that one.
Sorry, here we go. I can't even, sorry. This is embarrassing. We've done this long enough that I should know how to do this. I thought I did. I'm having trouble getting back there. What do you see on my screen right now?
your emails.
Your email, yep.
All right, then I'm going to do this. Is that better?
That's better.
That's it.
Okay. So it started sharing my other screen. So here we go. I apologize. So here are some of the towns that have complete streets in Connecticut. It's pretty broad. It's across the state. And also now, as of June, Wethersfield. I'm sorry, I'm kind of looking at the side because it's at the wrong. So complete streets in the health district. This kind of started in 2016. I started at the health district in 2016, and I got to know Peter a little bit, some of the town planners. There was a bike walk group was starting at the end of 2016, I believe. Kevin, maybe correct me if I'm wrong. And a lot of learning about bike pedestrian issues in the state of Connecticut. There's a pretty active regional bike walk group. And that kind of led to town planner meetings with Peter and the other town planners. I got to know Ed Chickarell at that time, and we were talking about maybe getting a regional bike map of kind of trying to link the bike paths in the health district. And as that kind of happened, we also were learning more about complete streets. The state was doing more, CROG was doing some more, I guess, pushing and training related to complete streets. And that led to, during Public Health Week, which is the first week of April in 2018, we held a complete streets and active transportation workshop in the auditorium in Newington. And the municipal leaders were invited to that, to the daytime transportation and complete streets group. And then there was one in the evening for the public to attend, kind of an overview of complete streets. And a lot of the time during 2019, there was involvement with Wethersfield and the planning group there as they moved through their very involved policy, which Peter will talk to you about complete streets. Jumped to 2020 and Wethersfield passed their complete streets policy. There was a joint meeting in the Great Meadows. And then kind of after the complete street policy was passed in June, Wethersfield, we did another training, and this one was led by a group called Tool Design. They have offices around the country, and they've been involved in complete streets throughout the country and helping communities to design them. And so we have them, and I think Lisa was there, attended that one. but that is available online. I will give you the link. And then we did a second part training for Wethersfield more specifically, also in September. So right now, a little bit of what's happening with Complete Streets. So there is an act that is happened right on February 24th. The Complete Streets Act was reintroduced into Congress by Senator Markey of Massachusetts and Congressman Cohen of Tennessee. That is there right now, and it's got a couple of purposes. It's kind of based on the legislation that passed in Massachusetts, but they want to require states to have technical assistance and award funding. They also want to give Complete Streets funding by 5% of the federal legislation would be spent on Complete Streets, and that localities that adopt kind of a certain minimum standard of a Complete Streets policy would be eligible to apply for some of that funding to build Complete Streets projects. And this bill was the work of that group I mentioned before, which was the National Complete Streets Coalition. Here are some resources. I want to point out the training that the tool design group gave is on our website. It's kind of a secret training page on our website. If you go to ccthd.org/complete streets, it will ask you for a password, and then you enter this number, 787-3387, which is streets, and you can get to the trainings there that we had from Tool Design in its webinars that you are free to listen to. And that is the end of my presentation.
Right. Thank you.
Is there any questions, or do you want to do that at the end, or Peter or Kevin?
we
Did I
can-
miss something?
We can take questions if you have, and then, once Peter is done, we can open up again. Unless everybody just wants to listen to Peter and then. Anyone? Any questions? All right, Peter, you're next.
Very good. Thank you for having us tonight, and hopefully my technology will work as well here. So can you see?
Maybe it will work as well as mine did.
How's that? Can we see that? No?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Well, once again, good evening, and thanks for inviting both Anne and myself. And with us, as was mentioned earlier, Kevin Sullivan has been an important stakeholder in our Complete Streets initiative. So I'm glad he could join us, and maybe he can chime in at some point. So I've just got about a half dozen slides to give kind of a summary of our experience with Complete Streets, the process we went through, some of the highlights, and some of the lessons that we've learned. As Anne mentioned, we started this process back in December of 2016, and I was going through some of my emails, and it all started with an email from Anne. So this is all Anne's fault if anyone wants to point any fingers. So certainly the health district was a big stakeholder. Bike Walk Wethersfield was also forming at about the same time, so things coalesced. And then also an important stakeholder in our process was our town engineer. So it's very important that the town engineer is an active participant in this process. As Anne mentioned, we met with all of the planners from some of the surrounding communities to see if we could at least start a conversation about Complete Streets, take a look at a network map to see how we link to each other. And that started right about the same time at the beginning of 2016. We were also fortunate to partner with the Capital Region Council of Governments. They just completed a regional Complete Streets program. So we were able to piggyback on some of their efforts. They assisted us with some of the training that we had back in 2018. So they were also an important player in this as well. And also, very importantly, a lot of transportation funds in the region come through the Capital Region Council of Government. So it's very important that they are aware of the things that you are trying to accomplish. Also in 2018, our Planning and Zoning Commission decided to take things a little bit more seriously, and they formed our Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. Our plan of development identified the need for a bicycle and pedestrian plan, so they tasked me with forming this committee and getting that initiative started. So we had our first meeting back in May of 2018. One of the initial things, and a very important thing that we did, was to post a community survey to get a pulse of the community as to how valuable, how important bicycle and pedestrian issues were for the community. We received, I think, over 700 responses to that survey, and through that survey, we were able to develop a list, a database of over 250 emails, which we've maintained to this date to keep people informed about bike and pedestrian issues going on in the community. So it was a very valuable effort. We used SurveyMonkey, so it was certainly very affordable, and that software actually tabulates the answers for us. So it was an exercise that was well worth it. Additionally, an important thing we did was we had a public workshop at our community center in the fall of 2018 to kind of start to share the idea of what complete streets are, what our planning process was all about. So that was also a very valuable thing that we did. Additionally, in terms of our process, there were numerous public and community events that we participated in throughout the community to continue to spread the word. And I got to give Kevin Sullivan a shout out. He was very diligent. He attended many of these events through rain, through the heat of the summer, with his table. He provided parking for some of these events. So he also provided a table where he shared information about complete streets and about the efforts. So one of the things that was very important to us was to have passionate volunteers and passionate stakeholders who were very committed to the whole effort. So, and fortunately, we have those kind of folks in Wethersfield. We reached out to many of our other boards and commissions. We tried to promote the idea of complete streets in some of the local media. We had a couple of articles in Wethersfield Life. We continued to have our Bike and Pedestrian Committee meeting. We just had our 22nd meeting the other day. So we've been at this for quite a while now. We also attended various other public information meetings whenever we could to keep the message out there. We use social media. All of the presentations, all of the analysis, all of the reports that we've done are posted on our website under our Bike and Pedestrian Committee. So all of that information is also, excuse me, readily available. And as Ann mentioned, we continued to offer complete streets training to anyone who was interested, primarily community leaders. We had some of our council members, some of our Planning and Zoning Commission members, some of our staff attend these sessions. So they were also very valuable in that respect. Some of our accomplishments, some of the highlights, some of these are small accomplishments, but when we started out, I think it was very important that we start with some baby steps. If you've been to Wethersfield Town Hall, through a grant from the Health District, we installed a bicycle repair station right in between the library and right between Town Hall. So it's very high profile location, and we see it getting used primarily by the kids at the middle school. We also had another small grant, and we installed a series of benches and custom bike racks throughout town to also raise the profile. We were able to have another grant where we bought some bike route, some share the road, and some Heritage Way signage that was installed. Bike Walk Wethersfield conducted some bike education training sessions with local elementary school physical education teachers. That was curtailed a little bit by COVID, but I believe they will plan on continuing to do that. And it's important, that's a very important thing to get the kids at that age knowledgeable, educate them about safety, helmet wearing, and all the things that go with safe bicycle riding. Some of the bigger accomplishments that we wanted to share, we applied to the Community Connectivity Grant Program. We were awarded almost $400,000 to make a series of intersection improvements and sidewalk repairs in Old Weathersfield. We were also able to acquire some funds, and for those of you who may live on the north side of Rocky Hill, we just recently completed the pavement rehabilitation of Highland Street, which is also part of our Heritage Walk bike trail. We put in striped lanes. We closed some sidewalk gaps. We did some handicapped accessibility improvements. So we were able to also take advantage of that. That project was a $2.7 million initiative. A couple of other things. We recently acquired another grant to reconstruct a portion of Great Meadow Road. Great Meadow Road is the road over by the Putnam Park office building. Goes under Route 3, will ultimately connect to the Putnam Bridge Trail. So we're able to now, we're in the design phase to get that stretch of road equipped with bike lanes, with sidewalks, and it would ultimately improve the connectivity with the Putnam Bridge Trail. And then additionally, another big one that is also being designed right now is we received $3.2 million to reconstruct Wolcott Hill Road at the entrance to Hartford on the north end of town and add some streetlights. That project will also have bike lanes. It will have additional bus shelters, bus pull-off areas, and other safety improvements. As Ann was also mentioning, this past summer, we were able to have our town council adopt our version of a complete streets policy. The complete streets policy basically just shares our commitment to consider complete streets when we are doing public infrastructure projects. Not that we have to incorporate complete streets in all of our projects, but we're committed to at least when those projects are being considered, take a look at how we can incorporate complete streets philosophies into those improvement projects whenever it's practicable. So in summary, that's what a complete streets policy states. It's just your ongoing commitment to be cognizant and be mindful of those kinds of improvements whenever it's practicable. And a couple of last things that we view as accomplishments. We're almost done with our bicycle and pedestrian plan. We've been working on that for probably too long. It's taking us a long time to get to this point, but we hope over the summer we'll have the plan finalized and approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And then lastly, we're eagerly anticipating seeing the Putnam Bridge Trail Connection project start construction. This is my last slide. Just a couple of things that I was thinking about that are lessons learned and things that we probably could have done maybe a little bit differently or a little bit better. But one of the very important things was you need passionate stakeholders, passionate volunteers, people who are very committed to this, who are willing to work at it for a period of time. As I said earlier, we've been at this for over 4 years, and we've had a consistent group of volunteers and stakeholders at the table pushing these initiatives along. So I stress how important that is. As I mentioned earlier, conducting the community survey, a very low cost thing, but it gave us a sense of how important these ideas were to the broader community. And we did get lots of positive feedback that this was something that the town should spend some time and effort pursuing. Looking back on it, if we had our druthers, I would have rather hired a consultant to do our bike and pedestrian plan. It's taken over 3 years to get to this point in time. And looking back on it, we could have condensed that by probably half the time if we had the resources to bring in a consultant to help us do that. One of the things I want to point out is to be careful what you wish for. We've had all of these new grants come online. It's now necessitated that our engineering department change some job descriptions and hire some new staff to help manage these projects. So they come with those kinds of responsibilities. So that's also something I wanted to share. And then lastly, and probably most importantly, these efforts have raised the profile in the community of how important it is to have bicycle accommodations and to pay more attention to pedestrian safety improvements and those types of things. So I think that was the last point I wanted to make. So I will end there and would be happy to answer questions with Ann or myself.
Right. Thank you very much. I think it was informative, and I'll open up the questions, or maybe Kim, do you want to give an update on what we have done so far, and then we can open up Q&A.
Well, comparatively speaking, I have to say we're more like in an infancy stage, Peter. I want to thank you and Ann for coming before this committee. I know our plan implementation committee, which is the group you see here, have been looking at our POCD, Plan of Conservation and Development. We've presented to the council the desire to create a bicycle pedestrian committee. Ed Ciccarello was there with one of our previous chairmen, Alan Mordhorst, who serves on our Planning and Zoning Commission, to the council to do a presentation on that. We've discussed it amongst ourselves. And once again, I totally concur that you need those passionate individuals to really get off the ground. I went to your Town of Wethersfield website and looked, and it seems as though to me this started with that group. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
So and I know we certainly have the Walk Bike Rocky Hill group. Of the people in the Walk Bike Rocky Hill group, we're fortunate to have Ed Ciccarello with us, here in this group. The surveys, I know we've used them in the past for our POCD. That's something I certainly concur with. We have made minor strides, I say, in that our regulations, when they were last updated, we talked about pedestrian needs, we talked about bike needs, and we're talking more with specific projects. As a commercial development comes in, making sure we have bike racks, that type of thing. But we wanted to get you on board, at least to, have a presentation before this group. Our mayor and our town council is very much in favor of doing this. Correct me if I'm wrong, Lisa. So hopefully this will be our kickoff to actually making something happen.
Baby steps are good. You got to start. When we got our bicycle repair station, we had so many people who wanted to get in the photo that they were, elbowing each other out of the way, because that was our first accomplishment. So it's the little things that I think then lead to the bigger things. So now we're talking, projects of multi-million dollars just in a very short period of time. But we found that the bike pedestrian committee has been the catalyst for these things. Has been the initiative for several of the grants. So just getting that group of people together in a room, it leads to all sorts of other things. So and you do need to commit time and resources if you want to get those things accomplished. So it's an effort. And as I said, it's we're 4.5 years down the road. So it does take time and it does take effort.
Kim, I would encourage you, if I can just say that the video that's on our website, if people want to see more, there's 2 videos, and the first one is a much more expert. I gave like the very surfacey, what is complete streets and why would you do it? But the training that the Tool Designs did for us in August, which is on the website, that's it was all day. Was it not, Peter, that first one? But you can watch it in chunks. They had it broken up and you could watch it at your leisure, but they did video it for us. And I think that might be great if the town council members that are interested want to get in there and view it or view it again for some more specifics on complete streets. That's a much more in-depth overview.
Lisa, you want to chime in?
No, I'm just super excited, that's all. Because for a long time, I was hoping to see a complete streets thing kind of happening. And so I know that from my perspective, that I think it's a wonderful opportunity for all of the reasons that you mentioned. And I am, eager to participate in any way that you may need me to participate. So I'm glad that we're having the conversation, and I look forward, I've reviewed the policies, and, I look forward to the day when the committee is at a point where, hopefully a policy will be recommended and we move forward.
So I think, Peter, you talk about small steps, and I think mayor and council, they are all very supportive of these complete streets, and they want to make sure that we move on and be at the step where you are today. So I think we have taken those initial steps, and as part of P&Z, whenever a new development comes in, we are big on sidewalks. We don't like to waive those requirements. You hear people complain about, oh, well, there is no sidewalk on the left and right. Why am I required to put in the middle? But unless you do it in the middle, there won't be left and there won't be right. So I think you have to start somewhere. So I think that's our first steps that P&Z has taken, and no matter who comes in, we require sidewalks and stuff. Now, I had a question in terms of Route 99. I mean that is like bifurcated, and it has broken our towns into two different segments, and it's a state road. And I would like to have some type of traffic calming and this complete street concept, so that people just don't drive by at 50, 60 miles. We want them to stop by, shop, walk, that kind of things. So my first question is about that, and DOT's commitment and help and willingness to do something different on Route 99, right? I mean, we also have Route 3. I mean, we have two highways that we have to deal with, and it has broken our town into 3 different ways. So that is the biggest challenge, that at least for me, how do we bring DOT and say, you know what, we need angle parking, on Route 99, so we can break up the speed and break up the traffic and things like that. And then the second question is, I see you have about $7-8 million so far, so that is like, is that all state funds? Is that combination of state, federal? So those were my 2 things, and then I'll open up to other members, if they have any questions.
Sure, certainly. So as Ann mentioned, the state of Connecticut does have a complete streets policy through their DOT, so they do have that in place. They are changing their philosophy. They've had a lot of turnover at DOT with the next generation. So that's all very positive. They seem to have come a long way than before. On a related note to that, we are probably going to be forming another, I say another because we've gone through this in various decades, another Silestine Highway Committee to look at the highway, not just the traffic aspects of it, but some of the other things that go into a master plan for the highway. So we're just starting that conversation. I think we're going to get some resources from our next budget to assist with that. So I'll reach out to Kim after this, at least share where we're going, and maybe there's an opportunity to do this in some joint way, which we did way back in 2005, 6, or whenever that was. I think, that intermunicipal cooperative type of thing, I think might open up some resources for us if we can all agree on, what the solutions to that might be. So I think we're on the same page on that, and it's come up at our bike pedestrian meetings, and just actually at our last meeting, we started to talk about that. And believe it or not, on some of the state bike route maps, they have Silestine Highway identified as a bike route, believe it or not. So I'm not sure as a cyclist that I would, based on some of the statistics Ann was sharing with everybody, I'm not sure we would want to, have folks go on the Silestine Highway as a bicycle route. And then the second part of your question was the funding. Well, that funding has come from a variety of sources. The lion's share, however, has come through CROG and through the DOT, through some of the programs that they have in place, the LOTSIP program, the Urban Action Grant programs. So there are resources out there that we were able to take advantage of in the last few years with a concerted effort. We had identified these corridors in our early discussions with the Bike and Pedestrian Committee as needing, these kinds of improvements. So, and we think the plan that we're preparing will lead to potentially other funding opportunities. And then, as Ann also alluded to, at the federal level, I think the direction that we're hearing is that additional resources may be coming down to the states and then down to the regional planning agencies and ultimately down to the local communities to take advantage of. So it's a good time to be having these conversations and starting to talk about projects that incorporate complete streets aspects anyway.
Can I add one thing to just kind of my observations of being an outside insider or inside outsider to Weathersfield's process? Peter mentioned in the kind of timelines of what they've accomplished, there was a community meeting that they had at, there may have been more than one, but there was a large community meeting that people came, and I think it was an outgrowth of the survey, right, Peter? That was after the survey. So you had a lot of email addresses to contact people. And this, from my standpoint, this was a really inspiring time frame that these community members came together. And I believe it was probably the town planner, someone had printed up very large maps, and the committee or the town members came in and they were asked at different stations, you were asked to look at different aspects of these maps. Where were pedestrian crosses needed? Peter, you're gonna have to help me on this. Kevin, you too. Where were the bicycling happen? People were looking, like people were standing with markers over maps, having conversations about this. And that I feel like was a really rich time that people really felt invested in what the bike walk group, what Peter, what the town engineer, what they were trying to do. And that was inspiring, I thought. What am I missing? What else did you have people? We all had assignments. We just kept moving around and working. And
yeah, we set up a whole bunch of different workstations and broke it into, okay, excuse me, what streets, do you see speeding? Where are the unsafe street crossings? Where would you like to see bicycle parking? We just broke it into all the standardized topics and allowed people. So it was a great way to get input for those people who don't like to speak at public meetings. They can do it. They could do it on the side quietly. So it was an additional tool that we used to get some of that public input.
I could just jump in quickly, Mr. Chairman. I know that the state has reached out recently, probably to, I don't know, different municipalities around, but looking at some of their state roads like the Silestine Highway, and just sort of playing around with thoughts of reconfiguring perhaps why, decreasing them, maybe adding bike lanes, maybe doing something. So I think, Peter, to your point about, involving the state, it might be a good time now because it's on their radar. So I can take a look into that. I know John is online. He's probably more familiar with that, but maybe just in terms of making some contacts right now. And,
Yeah,
and
and
I do,
I
I
can
do,
follow up. I can follow up on that. We did get feelers from the DOT regarding buzzword you're going to hear is road diets.
yeah, road diet, that's right.
Road diets. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's feelers right now.
Yeah,
But as Peter said, they're getting a lot of turnover at the DOT, and you're getting a little more progressive. In the last 20 years, we're getting a lot better communications with the technology. I mean, everything's changing there. And like everywhere, it's evolving. But I mean, now you call, you get somebody, they call back. The technology, and they're getting more progressive, and this is probably one of the things we're looking at. But that is one of the roads that they have a feeler out on, and also to your point about the bike map, I looked at that before we came on, and Cromwell Ave and Silas Dean and Rocky Hill are either less or least rated for bikes. Glastonbury Ave, same thing, least. It's a big red line the whole way. The state roads in town that are options would be Main Street, kind of south of this center of town, Maple, north of, say, CVS, and then bits and pieces of West Street, depending where you are, because you also have the highway. So those are the ones that are favorable, but unfortunately, you can't get the full length. And another point too, you talk about reducing lane widths. I don't know if you're familiar with Route 4 in West Hartford at all. From when you get past the Stop and Shop in West Hartford going east into the center of town, there used to be 2 lanes each way. There's now an island. It's probably done 10, 12 years ago. So they removed the 2 lanes each way. They put an island up the middle. It's probably 10 feet. It's landscaped. And then they have on-street parking, but it's parallel parking. You don't put the angle parking because people back out into the traffic. It's a little dangerous. So that's the way they handled that section, and it flows well.
I mean, I think it's Peter talk about the intermunicipal cooperation. I mean, Route 99 goes through 3 towns, right? I mean, we have Weathersfield, Rocky Hill, and Cromwell, and I think the more, the bigger consortium you have, I think you have bigger backup in terms of senators and reps and things like that. So I think you can make a bigger impact, and I believe like state likes to see intergovernmental type of projects. So I think, and Peter, you have already started, and Mayor, I would say maybe we join and we talk to Cromwell and see if we can make a better project out of this, like a whole study, and then see what can be done.
Definitely Weathersfield. Cromwell, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think they're in our planning district, are they? They're not CROG.
They're in, they used to be mid-state. Now they're in, what are they, the lower, is it the Connecticut River Valley or whatever?
yeah, lower Connecticut River,
yeah.
yeah.
So for the funding purposes, when you get that money, if you get lots of through CROG, it's being funded there. There are different, granted, it's all state funds, but it's a different planning entity.
Mhm.
So it gets a little sticky.
So the one thing that's also going on that I failed to mention is the Greater Hartford Mobility Study. They're doing a region-wide effort. They just hosted some public information sessions. This particular study is an offshoot of the I-84 study that they were doing for the viaduct, and it's looking at a wider level of projects rather than just the interstate. And they indicated that they were looking all the way down to Middletown. So there's an ideal opportunity. And that study supposedly is the precursor to millions and billions of dollars that would be brought in to solve some of the region's transportation. So if anyone has not weighed in on that, you should go to their website and post some of these ideas, so that and they will do follow-up with each of the communities. So but that may be the key to getting some of these intermunicipal initiatives considered at that level.
And another avenue that I know there's been minor talk about is passenger rail. From Middletown up to Hartford.
It should certainly be looked at. You've got the corridor, and the freight is so infrequent, but certainly should be thought about.
Can I ask Peter a quick question on the complete streets? We're talking about streets that are basically existing streets that are retrofitted to be safer for pedestrians, for traffic, and so forth. What about new streets? Are you guys changing your design standards to accommodate complete streets also in your design standards, the engineering standards, or have you not gone there yet?
We are so built out as a community that in the 18 years that I've been here, I think we have accepted maybe three small street sections. So new street construction is not a particular issue that we really have had to deal with. However, our town engineer has revised our existing standards for a number of other reasons, but we just don't experience, we just don't have the land where we see new subdivision development going on. However, when we do reconstruct streets, we do take a look at the complete streets level of improvements.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Peter and Ann, for coming, and Kevin. It's a great conversation to hear. This is a type of conversation that gets me very excited, like Mayor Murata. So thank you both for being here.
Sure.
Couple of questions for Peter. Where did you get your complete streets policy? Who did you steal it from? Because everybody takes it from somebody else, right?
Yeah, I'm not too proud to admit that I beg, borrow, and steal when it is appropriate and practicable. So in this particular case, the town engineer and I looked at just a wide variety of policies from throughout Connecticut, but also from other communities. We were also so we did draft that. I wouldn't point to one in particular. That we modeled it after. We begged, borrowed, and steal from various others. The one thing that we were fortunate to be able to do is we piggybacked, as Ann mentioned, there's a design firm that named Tool Design. They were hired by CROG to do the Regional Complete Streets program. They reviewed our draft and made some very valuable edits and suggestions. So we're able to get that free service through the CROG study. But there's a lot of good examples out there. We have them. So if you want, we'd be happy to share our files, and you can certainly look at ours and some of the others that we looked at.
So
they call that collaboration, not plagiarism once you get out of college.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that was a joke. A couple more questions, if I may. So, Peter, again, you started, and I don't know if it's the town council that directed you, or you were directed to create a walk bike plan, correct?
Through our
And
planning and zoning commission.
So the planning and zoning directed you, and so you had mentioned that if you had your druthers looking backwards, you would probably get a consultant for something like that. So a couple of questions. Number one, is that, do you think that's an essential part for us? Because as Kim said, yeah, we are taking baby steps, and I can't say that we have right now. I mean, I've been to a number of your meetings, and I see where you guys are at, and in regards to the planning. Is that an essential thing? A walk bike plan?
I probably when we started, I wouldn't. I would say no. It's not an essential thing, and there were people who were wondering why we were spending the time and effort. But now that we've progressed 4 years down the road, I've kind of changed my philosophy on that, and it's also a big quality of life thing. I mean, to this community, and particularly this past year with the COVID and folks getting outside and walking and bicycling, and it's sort of come together, and the value of the effort that we've gone through has really kind of risen to the surface, and now we're going to have some projects coming online shortly. So it's a series of events that led us to this point, but going backward, it depends on the community and how essential it is to your residents. And I think that was why we did the community survey in the first place, to get a sense of that. And then the other part of this is, I'm sure Kim has a whole lot of other things to do. So, throwing this on her lap and having her pull together a plan is something you have to seriously think about. And that's why I said, if I could have supplemented my time with a consultant kind of leading the effort, doing some of the heavier lifting, that would have been very helpful for me anyway.
Well, that's excellent direction for us. And then, so I guess my next question would go to Dimple or the mayor. So now that we understand, what Weathersfield has done, and we know there's a lot of policies, what is our next step, Dimple? Does P&Z have to gather some plans and start to put this together? What do you think our next step is, so we could send? I think the mayor is asking or desires to a complete streets policy. So, Dimple?
I think what will have to have happen is, we are gathering all this information, right? I just heard from Peter that the consultant who had done, who worked for CROG, had done on a regional basis. So, try to get that plan and see whether Rocky Hill was part of that plan, whether they looked at it, and see, if there is information out there that we can take it. I think that's one thing. Also, Peter mentioned that, they're looking at the Silas Dean. What I like to do is like piggyback on what is happening right now, rather than taking a brand new concept somewhere and just doing on our own. I think if we combine our forces with Weathersfield on Silas Dean, I think that can get jump start. And we can show some progress, right? Because people want to see progress, because if they don't see progress and we talk, I think that's where, you will lose your support, right? Enthusiasm like you have, and others. So I think that's where we should go. And I would like to have an ongoing dialogue between Peter and Ann, and see, how we can, and Kevin, and see, how we can get their expertise and do, and follow up on next steps. The third component that I see is the funding, right? We have to talk to CROG and say, hey, do you still have this funding available? We are looking at, and we are working with Weathersfield, that, and we are also looking at, from our own perspective, is there funding available? I think those are steps that we have to take, right? Because again, and we know we can only do so much with volunteerism and with without funds, right? Because at the end you need money. Kim and our engineer and whoever, and including you can put so much things together on paper, but at the end you need some funding to really move to the next phase. So that's what I'm thinking. I don't know if, Lisa, do you have anything along to add?
As I reported last meeting, we don't have to have the policy in place to do some of this. I got lots of money based on under the complete streets for the sidewalk on Elm Street, that we're going to start the survey once the snow's gone, and we get our data collector talking with our computer. There's a patch that's required, but yeah, we do have 600,000 roughly from CROG under lots of complete streets right now.
Yeah, And I know that some of that can be used just for study purposes, right? So if you wanted to explore something, so I do think you're absolutely right, Dimple, that it makes no sense to reinvent the wheel. Not only is it inefficient, but it's terribly expensive. So anywhere that we can start to collaborate with Wethersfield, we should jump on that bandwagon. And I think also Ed, you know, and on your end, perhaps, you know, gather those people who you think would be good volunteers, right? Like, is it the bike walk folks? Is it, you know, and let's start harnessing some of that energy so that, you know, if we can piggyback and start attending some of these meetings, that we have folks that are, you know, coming along with us, so that once we're ready, we're really actually ready to go. And we're not trying to create groups. I'm sorry, Anne, I know you want to speak.
It's okay. I just wanted to encourage you, as you're looking ahead, to not skip the step of community voices in this. I feel like that has helped Wethersfield. They have the backing of the people that have come out and spoken, and it's helped to formulate where they want to do and what they want to go, so that when you have, you know, access to money, you have a sense of what direction does our community want to go in, and you have more of a community buy-in. And that was certainly what I think Kevin was really instrumental in helping get that together, so that the community voice helps shape and gives a really solid foundation to hang the money on. I don't know if Peter, you want to say anything about that?
No, as I say, it's time consuming and it's hard work, but it, you know, pays off in dividends down the road after you've, you know, laid the base for that. So that's why I was stressing the community survey and the volunteerism, because it forms a nice launching point for some of your, you know, longer term efforts. So definitely very important.
I think the charrette format that you mentioned, Peter, I know we used it for our POCD also. That also gets people interested in what you're doing. I like the idea of a community survey. That's something that I know that they tried with our POCD. It wasn't as well received, but I know with our community center and trying to get that off the ground, they've been doing that more and more. But I do like the idea of the charrettes with the map. What do you like? What don't you like? What could we improve? That seems to get people more interested. Even if we can do it through the rare reminder or some of our weekly publications, get something in there. And I think the business community certainly would be willing to help there as well. So that'd be good.
Victor, do you have?
Yeah, to Steve's point earlier about doing stuff without a policy, Peter, question for you. You guys seem to have done a lot before you had your policy in place and approved by your council. Do you think that inhibited you, or do you think it was just a good move and it showed progress and it actually sold the policy to your town? Did you miss something by not having a policy before you actually had the policy, knowing that you got all that money? The order of operation, do you consider doing it before or showing progress, or just get the policy and then go get the funds?
There's a learning curve, you know, for people to understand what complete streets are. And we put all that work in to kind of lay that, you know, educational steps, because if we had gone into the council cold without having gone through that, I think it might have fallen on its face a little bit. So it worked for us. I think it was an evolution of the community getting to that point, and then it became just a kind of an obvious and logical thing that we needed to do. And as Ann indicates, you know, it might get you some additional points in grant cycles going forward as you pursue funding. So it's not absolutely critical. I mean, we kind of developed the philosophy anyway, because we had the town engineer and myself already kind of all the way down that road. So it's not critical that if it isn't done, you know, for a year or two down the road. So.
All right. Does that, I mean, Ed, I know we're not giving you solid things, but I think at least I have, a couple of ideas where, I would sit with, Kim and Steve and see, what is the plan for the funding that they've got from CROG, and as Mayor said, is there possibility that we can carve out some of the funds for study? And the second thing would be, joining our forces with Peter and Weathersfield on the Silas Dean, area. So that would be like a second thing, and also looking at what tool prepared in terms of the regional plan on Complete Street, because this is the first time I heard like there's something out there that CROG did, on a regional basis. So let's see what Rocky Hill and what they did for Rocky Hill, like, what is identified in that. So I think, these are at least my takeaways. And, as Mayor said, maybe we also get the volunteer group that you are working with and maybe some others, so that would be like a fourth. And then as Kim mentioned, and and Peter and Ann mentioned, like maybe send out the community survey. I think whether we get response or not, I think we have to start taking steps. So let's put things out and let's talk about these things. Maybe we have an interview with Peter and Mayor and on Complete Street and publish it on in Rocky Hill Live or other news media where we can start people thinking about these things, what these things are, right? So I think those are things that we can start doing without spending money, right? And then as we progress, maybe we can show some progress and try to get some funding somewhere. Makes sense, Lisa? Is that,
Yeah, we could do it. So Peter, we have this thing that we sort of called the Mayor Spotlight. So it's like, public access and whatever, if there's something, a topic that we feel, it's difficult to get every topic in front of everyone because not everyone watches a council meeting or PIC or, is on social media. So how do you reach everyone? So we started that mostly to reach people that we otherwise can't reach. So maybe that would be a great opportunity one day. We can sit down and have like a 20-minute conversation on Complete Streets and
Sure.
introduce it to the public that way, and then share it out, put it on the website.
So, yeah, I think that this was a good insight from Ann and Peter. I think it gives us good information. There's a lot of things that has been done. So rather than recreating the wheels, let's just take on, the successes that you have and build upon those for our town, and again, cooperation or multi-town intermunicipal type of projects or concept, I think that is always beneficial. So.
Dimple, could I ask you what Peter did talk a little bit about specifically about the walk bike plan, and I wonder if you would address that perhaps. I know we're talking about Complete Streets, and I don't know if that's is that a separate issue for you, Peter? When you talk about Complete Streets, you're talking about the walk bike plan. They're not two separate things. One is part of the other. No.
They're all interrelated. Obviously, the Complete Streets policy was a separate document, but it was basically also done by the Bike Pedestrian Committee as part of the planning process. So they all came from the same place.
So Dimple, I guess that was my point, is that walk bike plan has to come from somewhere. And as Peter said, yeah, he would have, if he had the money to, retrospectively, he would have got a consultant, So how do we approach that?
Again, if I understand you correctly, and if you are focusing on bike, walk bike what the way I consider it is it's part of complete streets, right? I mean, I think rather than focusing on just one element of complete street, I think if we look at from 10,000 foot and then go down and start collecting, like, we collect from you, the walk bike plan, and from some other towns, and from Weathersfield, and from other CROG studies and all that, we collect other elements of complete street. I think that's how we can progress, right? I mean, that's what I see, rather than just following this one element of complete street, right, Peter? I mean, I'm not considering walk bike as a separate thing. I think it is part of complete street.
Some towns will call their bike and pedestrian plan their complete streets plan. So they share in many cases the same. It's the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, that's how I would approach. And
So in essence, it'll continue being with this committee then?
yeah, I think, and for benefit of Peter and Ann, the plan implementation committee was part of POCD. That was created as part of POCD, because POCD, as you know, is it's not like a static document. I mean, it's like evolving document. It's a planning tool for the town. So what they had said is, you have a PIC committee, so that, for example, in last year or 2 years, after we passed the POCD, if a new idea comes in, the PIC committee will pick it up and address it and amend the regulations or whatever, and go on from there. So PIC is part of, I mean, it is like an umbrella committee that I feel, and any new ideas like this will fall under PIC. So I think, Ed, you are stuck with me, and on the PIC committee.
It's okay. We're good, man. We're good, Dimple.
It was like I'm stuck with Kevin. So.
Simple, just so you know, I had been looking at some of the policies for complete streets, and I do have a copy of Weathersfield, as a matter of fact, Peter. I also found that Madison and Fairfield, back in 2018, when those policies were created, they were deemed under the complete streets umbrella to be some of the better policies at the time. So I have those as well. So as Peter said, we're looking at bits and pieces of different things, because not everything fits every community. Weathersfield, as Peter says, and people know, it's developed. Rocky Hill, while it is developed, a lot of the streets that are in place were done years ago. The new streets are maybe going to connect smaller residential roads, not some of the major collectors. So we're going to be different than the town of Weathersfield and the town of Cromwell. So it does have to be tailor-made, but yes, you can, and everybody does, pick and choose from other communities, regs, ordinances, what have you. So we do have things to go on, and that will be something that I'll share with this committee. This was kind of like a kickoff, hopefully to garner some more education. Some great ideas came out of this meeting, and I want to thank Ann and Peter very much for participating, and Kevin. And hopefully we hear more from Kevin in the future. And maybe Ed and Kevin and Ed Chigarello and Kevin can certainly collaborate as to what worked in Kevin's mind, and we can get that going as well. But I want to thank you too for coming and sharing your thoughts with us. Dimple, I don't know if you have anything else.
Yeah, I think Ann had her hand up. So
I just wanted to point out, Kim, that in 2015, West Hartford's policy was recognized nationally. That's a very different community, but there might be some elements in there that you can find. It was very highly rated.
Thank you.
Now I have a question for Ann. So I saw in your presentation you had Weathersfield identified as the latest community. Can you put us in there? I think we are the latest community now, right?
In the planning stage, there'd be a little asterisk by it.
No, I really appreciate, and Peter and Kevin, spending your time and, talking about complete streets. I think it's a good education for us. And I think we have a lot of takeaways from you guys, and we won't be shy calling you guys again, when we need. So I think that, yes, go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt. Just a couple of quick things. Peter had a slide of takeaways toward the end of his presentation. What he left off of there was the part that said you need Peter and Ann. They have been an amazing source of support and leadership. So you're going to need people in positions of government to get this going. And it doesn't necessarily have to be two people, but it's got to be the kind of force that they have been. They've been amazing. So thank you. Ed and Dimple were talking a little bit about complete streets, bike pads. What is it? That's a messaging issue that we all have with this. And one thing that I think gets a little bit lost is we're talking about safety for all users. We're somewhat talking about improving it most for bikes and peds, but this leads to better safety for drivers as well. It's traffic calming and other things too. So I like to try to tell people what I'm about and what complete streets is. Try to remember to tell people it's safer for drivers too. And just don't tell them that we're trying to slow them down, because a lot of drivers don't want to slow down, but that's besides the point. And the only other thing, two more quick things. One is Celestine Highway needs to become the Celestine Boulevard.
Yeah.
And short of a major redesign, there are things that we can do in the shorter term, like making sure DOT has 11-foot travel lanes and things like that, striped. I'm not sure about Celestine and Rocky Hill, but I'm virtually certain the last time I was on Cromwell Ave recently, lane widths were like 12 and 13 feet in places, and that does not help to slow people down. And the last thing I wanted to say is Ed and I are already working together. We spy on each other's meetings, and actually, DEP just announced today nominations for greenways. So Ed and I are going to be talking about trying to come up with some kind of Wethersfield Rocky Hill Greenway nomination, probably to capitalize on what we call the Heritage Way in Wethersfield, and then as a connection to Rocky Hill to the Ferry Park. So, and that doesn't cost any money either. So thanks for your time.
Thank you. Any other questions? So I think it was a great discussion, as I said, and I think we have a lot of takeaways, and we will be in touch. Our peak committee meets every quarter. So, and then if we need a special meeting like today, we schedule that as well. So we are going to make sure that we meet continuously so that we can get things done. So I think having said that, and if there are no other questions for our guests, again, I would like to thank you all, for coming and presenting the complete street concept. Our next meeting is April 7th, 2021. So that's our next quarterly meeting. If you don't have anything else, then I would like to have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Motion passes. So thank you again. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for having us.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Everybody,
Good night.
bye-bye.